So tonight we're going to start with Ruth Grupe, our special education director, and she's going to explain some budgetary considerations. As we know, we're starting the budgetary process. So Ruth I'm going to turn it over to Ruth, and it's a short presentation that I will pass out. So you can have it.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Are you going to click? So my budgetary considerations for you to consider are 1.5 school adjustment counselors, 1 FTE for a combo vertical alignment for the 8th and 9th grades, an FTE for preschool, because we have a significant number of preschool students who have trauma. We had a lot of referrals this year. We have about 67 initial evaluations for preschool. A team chairperson, we have team chair people who are double their meetings as of this day from last year, so the numbers are pretty significant. And because the preschool class and the referrals have grown exponentially, I'd like to request a full-time teacher and a para for an additional preschool classroom for compliance issues.
Do you want to explain how many students are currently in the preschool program?
Sure. In the program, so we have about, I mean, I can talk about who's in the ASD programs, yes. So we have about 30 students that are in the current autism program, and the ratios in the preschool are supposed to be 1 to 9 from the state, and we currently have not the integrated program. For a sub-separate program, we're currently at 10 in the morning and 11 in the afternoon, and then we've split some of the children that are higher cognitive into other classrooms so that we could be lower in the compliance issue, but we're still over.
So this is the outcome of special education of what we thought of that would help us move toward our goals, some of our goals next year. Does anybody have any questions for Ruth?
Mr. Hockman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Arnautis. Through you to Ms. Grupe or Ms. Murtagh, the first question I have is, do we have an additional room at the McCarthy to house another teacher and classroom?
Yes, we would use the health and art room, and art and health would be in the classrooms.
And with regard to the ratios, Ms. Grupe, is the 1 to 9 ratio for staff members, or is it for teachers, or?
Teacher, 1 teacher, 9 students, and 1 para. And we, that's just for pre-K. If it goes to elementary, it's 1 to 12.
And the district-wide, or the team chairperson that you're looking to add, do you have a building in mind, or is it a floater, or?
Well, what I was hoping, where we're going to be using the 8th, the 0.5 and the 8th and the 0.5 and 9th, if we are lucky enough to get a school adjustment counselor, I was hopeful that we could use the team chairperson for programs. Right now, we have team chair numbers that are pretty high in the high school because they kind of funnel up to the middle and high school, the numbers of the students. So the programs, which are the low cognitive milestones programs or the choices programs, I would have a team chair designated specifically for that, so parents would know that they can contact somebody that's only uniquely to the programs.
And if I may, we have to be, I don't know what the right word is, we have a robust special education programming in Peabody, and I think you do a great job, and your staff is doing a great job, and thank you for that. And I imagine that there's been some conversations at the administrative level about perhaps a difficult budget and funds being limited to some extent, but your department has to have more needs than this. And
If you're asking, I'll be happy.
no, I really am, and it might not be tonight, it may be some
Yep.
other supplemental submittal to us, but I think we all want to be responsive to
Right.
what's really going on the ground, and we may not be able to provide all of the things that you need, but you must need more than this.
We do, but it's a triage at this point. You know, we're all in a budget. You have to be serious about that. The reason that I'm asking even for this is because, you know, in 2016, we had 137 kids out of district, and now we have 93. So we've brought students back that have higher needs, and we need to support them.
Yeah, I appreciate the position that you're in, and I appreciate that you're being modest with the requests that you're making, but, you know, we get paid large salaries to make the tough decisions, and, you know, the information that would help me at least to make those decisions is beneficial, so I'd rather have the information and tell you, I'm sorry, we did the best we could, but then you hear me.
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Amico?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Ms. Grupe, and thank
Welcome.
you to your staff for what you do every day. I was wondering if you could, first of all, I would be supporting the additional school adjustment counselor because trauma, depression, social anxiety, you know, and so forth are just so prevalent in our schools, and they will continue to be.
Right.
And we need people who are professionally trained to help these kids. So I would be supporting that. Could you run us through a scenario, Ms. Grupe, where our special ed budget is sort of like a wild card in a case where it fluctuates and it could be a very expensive one? Could you just give us a scenario, just for the public watching on TV, how quickly and easily we could spend money that we have to because we're mandated by the state?
Right, so there's so many different scenarios, but I'll just use compliance as one. We are governed by laws, and we're governed by rules from the DESE and from both IDEA, Mass, and federal laws. So that being said, we have to adhere to the numbers, just if you're looking at pure numbers, but that's not level of need. Level of need is a different thing altogether. You have, you know, some students that come with comorbid diagnoses that are coming with trauma, they're coming with autism, they're coming with emotional disabilities, neurological disabilities, none of which that we can explain to the public, if you will, because we have to protect the rights of our students, but the need is prevalent. If we have one student that goes out of district, for example, that could cost us $100,000, give or take transportation, and depending on where we send a student, that's on the low side. And if you look at that times number 13 of years that they're going to be in the district, if we send out a pre-K or a kindergartner, that's significant money to us as a district. That's why we've built such great programs, and I have to thank my team tremendously for that. And so that can add quickly. You send 3 children out, that's $300,000 times however many years they have left in the system. So we have to be very cognizant of that, and that's why we're trying to build ourselves in our programs.
Great. Thank
Does
you
that
very
make
much.
sense?
It does. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mrs. Grupe.
Yep.
This is a question about reimbursements. I know that if someone in the district in special education receives like OT or PT, and there is insurance, that the district can be reimbursed for that. Does that reimbursement work for counseling as well, like school adjustment counselors?
It just started, the law just passed for that, but it doesn't come to the district, it comes to the city.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes, I knew that.
So, yeah, it's a percentage of what they make hourly, and they look at a state rate, and then they have to submit when they see students, and that goes into our clerical department, and that goes to the Medicaid department, and that's how it's billed that way. I don't know those numbers. So, yeah, it definitely comes back, and that school adjustment counselors have just gotten, and BCBAs have just gotten approved.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mrs. Grupe?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And Ruth does do an excellent job every single day with her staff. Wonderful staff, too. So we're going to just turn over our PowerPoint, our slides, and I'm going to have Mr. Buckley present the high school, his items for the high school. So, Mr. Buckley, if I can have you join us. And knowing that it's a difficult budget year, we really had conversations about needs. So that's what we're going with. I'll give you a laundry list.
So I'm glad Ms. Grupe went first. So we're looking at, I know we're looking at a tough budget, and that was a great question that you asked, Mr. Hockman, about, this list could be a mile long, and but we're also, I think, through our leadership team and through the superintendent, we're realizing that we really have to focus on certain things. And again, not in any particular order, but it's one of my last ones. It was requesting a second full-time school adjustment counselor. I guess I should have talked to Ms. Grupe before I put this on, but we were thinking alike. And talking before the meeting to a few of you, the trauma that some of these kids are coming to school with, some of the issues that we're dealing with, it's really changed how high school looked even 5 years ago. Whether it's depression, whether it's them having a hard time just even making it from class to class because of anxiety. So, any kind of support we can give them just helps to the next step, the academics, wherever it may be. I know there's been talk of a new high school, so I know that there are things that, we're going to need to do, but we obviously aren't looking at building another whole wing onto the high school for certain needs that will come hopefully with the new high school. But just to continue to replace, we've really done over the last 10 years or so a lot of work. First it was the laptops and the carts and the projectors. But those things have shelf lives, and we've been very lucky and fortunate that we've kind of maintained a budget to help replace those as we went. I know with the new Higgins here, the short throw interactive boards, which are the whole piece, what we did is we started to replace some of our Promethean boards and some of our smart boards that were dying. I think we replaced 6 or 7 of those last year in the math department. So we still have some in the science department and still half of the math department to go. I don't think those will make, we may make another year with some of them, but their shelf life has kind of gone past what we expected them to make. We've been very fortunate. So they are, expensive as a group. They run about $6,000 for the projector, the board, the interactive, the computer with it. But it's something that, if you go into a classroom at the high school, you'll see them using this, moving things around, kids using those too. So these are things that, again, it would be, in a perfect world, I'd love to replace the science and math department with those, but I know budget-wise that's just not going to happen. But if we can continue to have and maintain, or at least replace the ones that are broken so no one is without one that needs one, that's what we kind of did last year. We looked at which ones were kind of starting to fail, which ones the IT guys do a great job of keeping track of, which ones have had problems through the year, and then we replaced those. So those are some of the things. The projectors are another thing that other departments use. We were fortunate, and again, it was kind of strange. We had ordered some the year before, about a half dozen or so. Last year, or 2 years ago, we ordered another half dozen. We didn't really go through them all, and then this year we're down to, I think, one left. And those are things that are, $400 or $500 a piece, but those are things that everyone uses now. I mean, it's amazing. There are very few chalkboards left, and people putting notes up that way. And then obviously the restoring the funding of all the supplies, textbooks, equipment. That was a huge hit that we took last year. Our operating budget got cut by almost half, actually more than half. You do have those leftover, a couple, manila folders, cases of those, or, I think I have a lot of pink, while you were out type of notes or messages and stuff like that. But other than that, we are to the bare minimum. And, those are the type of things that you're able to squeak by last year on this year. I mean, I have teachers buying their own supplies and really foraging around the building. It's a big building, and every once in a while, you know, they may find a package of paper that was stuffed away 4 years ago in a file cabinet. But, you know, fortunately, we haven't reached that point yet with paper or anything like that. We're trying to use less and we're trying to conserve. But, you know, any kind of restoration to those funds will be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Questions? Step.
Thanks, Mr. Buckley. Excuse me. Question on the school adjustment counselor. How many are there presently, and what is the like the ratio
Yeah,
to counselors?
we have there is a counselor in the community school, and there's one in the whole high school. So if you're asking about a ratio, wherever our population right now is, a lot of times that adjustment counselor is trying to deal mostly with kids that have services already in their IEP or on a 504 or whatever it may be, and then trying to, yes. Thank you. And someone just told me that the caseload of the adjustment counselor right now in the high school is 112. So it's pretty overwhelming. Person's very, very good at what she does, but as you can hear, just even starting the morning at 7:15, 7:20 to the end of the day, and even sometimes past that, of always dealing with trauma. It wears people down, and she does a great job. She brings in interns to work with her and teach them, but again, there are compliance issues there that she only can do so much with the interns too. Yeah, I did. I did say one at the community high school, right? Yes, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Mr. Amico?
Thank you, through the chair. Mr. Buckley, thank you very much for all you do. Mr. Buckley, I know you go to conferences during the year, and you get to talk to other principals and other superintendents and so forth. How many, in those different principals and people that you speak to and of the same size at Peabody High School, how many adjustment counselors do they have in their buildings versus what we have?
Well, they do have more. I'm fortunate that a lot of the support I get is through the Northeast Conference. We have a principals meeting once a month.
Okay.
And I will say that, you know, in some areas where we're maybe a little bit deficient, but we have other things that they don't have either. So it varies from school to school, just in the NEC conference itself, so it's hard to quantify. But, you know, we're all dealing with the same issues. And, you know, whether you have 3 or you have 1 or you have 6 adjustment counselors, it's never enough. And that's the reality of the situation right now, with some of the supports that kids have or don't have. And we're just finding that we're really putting a lot of emphasis, and a lot of the discussion that we have, aside from sports, with the conferences and how they align and all that kind of stuff at the principals meeting, but we also do talk about, you know, how are we getting these kids their social, emotional support. And it's a problem, whether it's a district that you would think is more affluent, say, than Peabody, or it's a inner city school that, you know, it has no boundaries.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you, through the chair.
You're going to need yours. I'm going to need mine. Thank you, Mr. Buckley. In regards to the school adjustment counselor, I completely agree. Mental health is a very serious issue right now. Counselors are necessary to get a lot of our children through the day. Do we have counselors or like at the health center as well, though, to give support right now?
Yep.
What do we have there?
We have a counselor there. We have a couple counselors there. They come in, they split time. We send people to the health center. Some kids go, and it depends on how they feel about going there too. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they feel more comfortable, say, with a teacher or administrator or their guidance counselor. Mm-hmm. there hasn't been that support there for the general ed student where they can pop in. You know, a lot of times we have to go through different things. If the student does go to the guidance counselor, that's when the guidance counselor will refer them down, or they can stop in too.
Okay, so we do have some extra supports in place?
Yeah, we
besides
do.
just one school adjustment counselor in the
We do.
building? We do, okay. Because, yeah, it is very important, and in this day and age, it seems to be increasing daily that those counselors are needed, so I completely agree. That's all I have, thank you.
Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Thank you for what you and your staff do at the high school. It's a challenging building with a challenging population. So thank you. It's, I just wanted to maybe make a statement more than ask you a question, if I could. We got some news that is good news for your building, which is in a difficult building to manage and deal with, but we hear that the drains and the leaks on the roof are being addressed this week, now that we have some nice weather finally.
Yes.
And the motor for the B-House Science Labs is being, the part came in and is being installed this week, so while we're here and everyone's listening to you from their living rooms eating their dinner, we wanted to just make sure that they were aware that there's some good things, a lot of good things, but some good things happening to the facility itself, so thank you.
Yeah, it's a solid place. And again, when things like that, I mean, yeah, we were waiting for the motor in B house, but we also had A house and C house working too. So, you know, there are multiple rooms. There are things that, you know, maybe need fixing, but it's a over 300,000 square foot building, and there's a lot of good parts to it too. So we aren't in that stage yet where things are, you know, I know there are other schools, and I've talked to other principals that are building new high schools that are, you know, they have a fire watch because there is no alarm system in it. So building the new high school and looking into it at this point and knowing that it will take some time, I think this is the perfect time to do it, because we are starting to see, you know, things that are going to need replacing. But again, if you're replacing things that are costing millions of dollars, is that really where you want to put the money at this point? Thank you. Thanks for getting to that. Those parts.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley, for all your hard work each and every day as well. Mr. Busey is going to present his laundry list of items tonight for his budgetary considerations. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Mr. Busey?
Good evening, everybody. It's actually two things, only one on the slide, but Mrs. Grupe and I had talked prior to this meeting and decided that the .5 adjustment counselor recommendation, or request, I guess, would go on to her slide. So I just want to let you know that I support that, and it is something that we see as a need here at the Higgins. What has happened is, over the past few years, as you know, we have added services or added adjustment counselors at the elementary level to meet the needs of those kids at the elementary level. They're now rising up to the Higgins Middle School. So our adjustment counselor here has got quite a large caseload too. So I do support that .5 adjustment counselor, as well as the restoration of funds for our general teaching supplies, instructional equipment, textbooks. So refrain, I'm sure you've heard from all the principals at this point, that making it work on half of what we had this year. We were fortunate here at the Higgins. We're still, you know, we're new, so we're still living off of some of that project money and some of the supplies we got through the project. I'm not sure how much longer we would be able to do that, but again, we were certainly more fortunate than some of the other schools in the district in being able to manage 50% for a year. It would be nice to not have to do that for another year, so that's the reason for that bullet point up there. Other than that, I don't have any other requests.
All right. This is done.
I was waiting for that, Mrs. Dunn.
Just going to tell you something funny. I was looking quickly at the board, and the slide hadn't flipped, and all I saw was continue to replace projectors, short throw interactive boards and laptops, and I thought, oh my gosh.
No, ours are still in good shape.
Thankfully, this came up, I know, and I'm sorry about, you know, the needs for these, but I'm glad that the technology in the building is doing well for you. Actually, I will ask a serious question. Does the technology, and it probably is hard for you to tell, is it helping to supplement some of the instructional supplies and textbooks that you would like to have, but kind of as a secondary thing you're using technology for it? I'm thinking of like textbooks. If we don't have what you need, then you have to rely on the technology. Is that what's happening?
It certainly plays a part. I mean, there's a lot more that you can do in a one-to-one environment. There's certainly a lot more available out there. We're doing a lot more blended learning here, where teachers are utilizing resources outside of the textbooks or the actual supplies that we have here. So yeah, it does certainly help having that available to us, and hopefully paper too. Over a couple of years, we'll be able to see, I think, that savings on paper in a one-to-one environment.
Okay. And as far as equipment, is that technological equipment, or is it equipment you need for custodians? Or
It would be more the technology equipment. It's just maintaining it.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the point where we'll start to lose some bulbs in projectors, and just being able to stay on top of that so that we don't all of a sudden have to have a huge expenditure in some year because everything starts to go at once. So we try to stay on top of making sure that we have a plan for maintaining and the longevity of it. So,
yeah, being able to be proactive.
Yeah, we're trying that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Busey, and I appreciate all your hard work each and every day with your staff, too. So, something that was brought, and I can bring this up here, something that was brought to us as part of the negotiations as a task force for Unit B to take a look at caseloads. So Mrs. Grupe and I have a subcommittee that we've been meeting with all year long. So we will be presenting that to you in your packet, probably next school committee meeting. We met 6 times, and we wrote a little synopsis of our summary of what we did. So we will be presenting that at next school committee meeting. I will be presenting it or putting it in your packet. But similar things to a school adjustment counselor, IEP team chairperson, having those discussions with that group. So it was a good exercise. I'm glad we did it because they saw what we saw, and we collectively put our heads together to summarize that and show what we need moving forward. So, yes, Mrs. Dunn.
It's a question that now that we've heard from all the levels of the school regarding the textbooks. I know we got a request about a new math textbook for grade 6 or a new math program, or you're looking at things like that. Could the school committee have, do we have a textbook adoption schedule? I know you always deal with that. Could we have that for the budget as well?
Yes, Dr. Lord and I are working on that as we work with our curriculum teams,
Good.
so we can definitely get that to you.
Okay.
Yes.
And if there is an area, a specific subject that really needs an infusion of new materials, if you could highlight that. I know I would appreciate it. I imagine the other members probably would too, to look at, how to make that work with the budget.
Great. I mean, moving forth, I can tell you right now, we have to look at social studies. I mean, it's history, but it's history.
Mm-hmm.
These books, these texts, or these resources are, so that's our next area, but we're also looking, we'll show you a timeline of when we adopted things, and
Oh, good.
we'll
That
show
would
you
be
that
perfect.
and show you what we need moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Any other questions?
Thank you.
No. Thank you very much, and we'll start our regular meeting in 15 minutes. Thank you.